Young billionaire leaves hospital in tears. Then a street girl reveals how to save his wife. Before we start the story, leave us a comment telling us where you are watching from. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to support us. The scent of antiseptic clung to his clothes, sterile and sharp, as if it had seeped into his very skin. Nathaniel Cross adjusted his silk tie for the third time in 5 minutes, though he wasn't sure why he even bothered. No one here cared about appearances. Not the exhausted doctors pacing through the halls, not the nurses rushing from room to room, and certainly not the patients who lingered in the space between life and death. But appearances had always been his armor. They made him feel in control, untouchable, powerful. And yet, standing in the fluorescent-lit hallway of Mercy General Hospital, Nathaniel had never felt smaller. A doctor in a white coat approached, her face weary, eyes ringed with dark circles. "Mr. Cross," she said gently, nodding toward an empty consultation room. "Can we speak in private?" Nathaniel stiffened, already knowing he wouldn't like what she had to say. Isla Cross had been in a coma for 3 months. 3 agonizing months of waiting, of whispered hope, of endless medical consultations that yielded nothing but grim statistics. He followed the doctor into the room, his breath tight in his chest, his heart pounding despite the stillness in his posture. "There haven't been any significant changes," the doctor said, flipping through Isla's chart. "Her vital signs are stable, but brain activity remains." "What about the new treatment I suggested?" Nathaniel cut in, his voice sharp. "The specialist from Switzerland? I sent over his research." "Mr. Cross," the doctor interrupted gently, setting the file down. "We've been through this. The experimental procedure you're referring to has only been tested in theory, and even then, on a very specific set of patients. Isla's case is different." Different. It was the doctor's polite way of saying hopeless. Nathaniel exhaled slowly through his nose, trying to suppress the wave of frustration rising in his chest. "How much?" he asked abruptly. The doctor blinked. "I'm sorry?" "How much would it take?" he repeated, his voice sharper now. "To bring in the specialist? To run every test, every treatment, everything. I don't care what it costs." The doctor hesitated, then shook her head. "It's not a matter of money, Mr. Cross." For the first time in his life, money wasn't the answer. Nathaniel clenched his jaw, his mind racing. There had to be a way. He had spent years building an empire, turning a small hedge fund into Cross Financial, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate that held power in every industry worth owning. There wasn't a deal he couldn't close, a problem he couldn't fix. He had bought his way out of lawsuits, bribed politicians for favorable policies, crushed competitors with ruthless efficiency. Every obstacle had a price. But now, as he sat in this dim hospital room, staring at a doctor who pitied him, he had nothing to offer that would make a difference. Silence stretched between them, the weight of it pressing against his ribs. "If you need support, we have counselors who can—" Nathaniel pushed back his chair and stood. He had heard enough. Sympathy was useless. Without another word, he strode out of the consultation room, his steps quick, almost frantic, until he reached Isla's hospital room. He hesitated at the door. It always hit him like a punch to the gut, seeing her like this. Still. Too still. Machines surrounded her, blinking, beeping, keeping her alive in the most technical sense of the word. Her chest rose and fell in a rhythm dictated by wires and tubes. Isla, his Isla, who had once been so full of life, who used to sing off-key in the kitchen, who always smelled of vanilla and jasmine, who laughed at his terrible jokes just to make him feel less awkward in social settings, was reduced to this fragile, unmoving shell. Nathaniel sat beside her, taking her hand in his. It was cold. It always was. For 3 months, he had followed the same routine. Come in, sit down, hold her hand, talk about business, leave. It was methodical, predictable, like everything in his life. He had told himself that consistency mattered, that if he acted as if everything was normal, one day it would be. But it was a lie. "The doctors are pessimistic," he admitted aloud, though the words felt foreign on his tongue. "They say there isn't much else that can be done." He swallowed hard, running a hand through his neatly styled hair, mussing it for the first time in years. I don't know what to do, Isla." His voice cracked, surprising him. I always know what to do. I fix things, but I can't fix this. The room remained silent except for the steady hum of the machines. Nathaniel squeezed his eyes shut. This wasn't supposed to happen. They had built their lives together with the understanding that there would always be more time. He had put off vacations, missed anniversaries, skipped late-night talks in bed in favor of emails and acquisitions, always telling Isla, soon, next time, just a little longer. But time had betrayed them. A nurse knocked on the door, pulling him from his thoughts. Mr. Cross, I need to check her vitals. Nathaniel nodded, standing quickly, reaching for his coat out of habit. Of course, the nurse hesitated, noticing his movements. Are you leaving already? Yes, he said automatically. I have an important meeting. A lie. For the first time since the accident, Nathaniel left the hospital without planning to return. In the elevator, the weight of defeat pressed down on him. He who always got what he wanted, who could manipulate the market with a single phone call, who had shaped entire industries with his ambition, was now powerless. The night air hit him as he stepped outside, cool and damp, the city lights reflecting in puddles from the afternoon rain. The world had the audacity to keep turning as if his entire life hadn't come to a screeching halt. He loosened his tie, breathing deeply. It wasn't just the hospital that felt suffocating. It was everything. His life, his work, his success. What was it all worth now? Sir, Nathaniel barely registered the small voice at first, lost in his thoughts. Sir, the voice repeated, more insistent. He looked down. A little girl, no older than 5, stood before him, barefoot, her oversized hoodie hanging loosely from her tiny frame. Her dark curls were messy, her skin smudged with dirt, but her eyes were clear, unwavering, as if she knew something he didn't. Nathaniel's instinct was to pull away. He had spent his life brushing past people like her, street kids, beggars, people with no place in his world. He reached for his wallet, ready to hand her money just to make her go away. I don't want money, the girl said as if reading his mind. I know how to save your wife. Nathaniel froze. His wallet remained suspended in the air. What did you say? The girl smiled, a strange, knowing smile that sent a shiver down his spine. I know how to wake her up. Nathaniel's heartbeat pounded in his ears, and for the first time in his life, he felt something he hadn't in years. Hope. The drizzle had turned into a steady, rhythmic rain by the time Nathaniel Cross stepped out of Mercy General Hospital. The cold droplets clung to his skin, seeping into the fabric of his tailored suit, but he didn't care. He barely noticed. His mind was trapped in an endless loop of the doctor's words. No improvement, no response, no hope. For the first time in his life, Nathaniel had walked away from a battle he couldn't win. Isla was slipping through his fingers, and for all his billions, there wasn't a single thing he could do to stop it. He loosened his tie, pulling in a shaky breath. The city glowed around him, neon signs reflecting in puddles, the streets alive with the hum of traffic, indifferent to his grief. His footsteps echoed hollowly against the pavement as he strode toward his car, parked a few feet away. He reached for the door handle, eager to sink into the leather seat, drive somewhere far, somewhere he could forget. Sir. The voice was small, almost swallowed by the sound of the rain. Nathaniel ignored it at first, thinking it was his imagination. But then, a tiny hand tugged at the sleeve of his coat, insistent and real. Sir, the voice said again, soft yet strangely commanding. I know how to save your wife. Nathaniel stiffened, his grip tightened on the car door handle. Slowly, reluctantly, he turned. The child standing before him couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Barefoot, her thin frame swallowed by a hoodie at least 3 sizes too big, she was soaked from head to toe. Water dripped from her wild, curly hair, tracing paths down her small, dirt-streaked face. But her eyes were bright, too wise for her years, as if she had lived lifetimes beyond what her body suggested. Nathaniel's first instinct was to step back, to put distance between himself and whatever street scam this was. He reached into his pocket, fingers brushing against the cool leather of his wallet. Money always solved problems. He'd give her something and walk away. I don't need money, the girl said before he could speak, her voice steady, assured. I need you to listen. Nathaniel blinked. He hadn't spoken yet. How had she... The unease curled around his spine, an unfamiliar sensation. He, a man who lived and died by logic, suddenly felt the ground shift beneath him. "I don't know what you think you know," he said, his voice colder than he intended. "But my wife is in a coma and nothing can—" "She's waiting," the girl interrupted. "But you can't hear her, not yet." His breath caught. The rain fell harder, hammering against the pavement, drumming against the hood of his car. What was she saying? Nathaniel shook his head, forcing his mind back to reality. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. He yanked the car door open. "Go home, kid, wherever that is." "I know about the way she smiles," the girl said suddenly. "That little thing she does, starting at the right corner, like she's about to tell a secret." Nathaniel froze. Slowly he turned back to her. The noise of the city seemed to dull, as if the world itself was holding its breath. His fingers slackened on the car door. "How do you know that?" The girl shrugged, her small frame barely moving beneath the heavy hoodie. "I just do." Nathaniel stared at her. His heart pounded against his ribs, a slow, uneasy rhythm. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The girl wiped the rain from her face, smearing the dirt instead of clearing it. "My name is Lena," she said simply. Then she extended a tiny, grimy hand toward him. "And if you trust me, I can take you to the place that will bring her back." Nathaniel looked at the outstretched hand. His pulse thundered in his ears. Every instinct told him to walk away. He had spent a lifetime making calculated decisions, avoiding risk. And yet, something inside him whispered that this moment, this girl, was different. His hand moved before his mind had fully decided. He clasped Lena's small fingers in his own, and something shifted in the air between them. A thread, a connection, something unseen but powerful. Lena smiled. "We have to walk." Nathaniel glanced at his car. "We can drive. Where are we going?" "No," she shook her head firmly. "We have to walk." Nathaniel exhaled, exasperated. "Why?" Lena only grinned, and it was an odd expression for a child so young, a knowing kind of smile. "Because some roads can't be traveled in cars." Nathaniel hesitated. He looked up at the hospital towering behind him, then down at the little girl before him. The rain soaked them both, drenching his $1,000 suit just as easily as it had her tattered clothes. He had already lost Isla once. Could he afford to ignore the only spark of hope he had been given? With a resigned sigh, he let go of his car door. "All right," he said, "let's walk." Lena beamed. She turned and started moving, her bare feet splashing through puddles, completely unfazed by the cold. Nathaniel followed, stepping away from the familiar glow of the hospital and into the unknown. They moved through streets he had never walked before, past alleyways he had only ever glimpsed from behind the tinted windows of his car. The high-rise buildings gave way to worn-down apartment complexes, then to streets lined with crumbling storefronts, until finally they stood before a gated structure that looked as if it had been abandoned for years. Nathaniel frowned at the faded sign barely visible through the rusted bars. St. Hope Orphanage. Lena slipped through the gap in the gate, motioning for him to follow. Something inside Nathaniel hesitated. "This place is empty," he said. "What does this have to do with Isla?" "Everything," Lena answered, her voice softer now. She reached for his hand again, and despite himself, Nathaniel let her take it. She led him through the front doors, past peeling wallpaper and broken floorboards, until they stopped in front of a mural covering one of the walls. Nathaniel's breath caught in his throat. It was a drawing of Isla, crude, made with colored pencils, but unmistakably her. The soft curve of her smile, the brightness in her eyes, and in the lower corner, a neat signature. "With love, Isla." "She was here," Nathaniel whispered, barely able to believe it. "She came here." Lena nodded. "Twice a week, every week. She told us stories. She made us laugh. She said this place made her feel like she had a purpose." Nathaniel swallowed hard, his throat tight. Isla had a whole life he had never known about. While he was busy closing deals, expanding his empire, she had been here, giving parts of herself to children like Lena. Lena pointed to another drawing on the wall, this one of 3 stick figures, a man, a woman, and a small child. "She wanted a family, a real one. She said she had to talk to you about it." Nathaniel felt the world tilting. She had wanted to tell him, and he had never listened. Lena tugged on his sleeve, her eyes searching his. "You still can," she whispered, "if you don't give up on her." Nathaniel felt something crack inside him. For months, he had been looking for answers in hospitals, in doctors, in research. But maybe the answer had been here all along, in the life she had built outside of his, in the love she had given. Nathaniel turned back to Lena, his decision already made. Tell me what I need to do. And as Lena smiled, Nathaniel realized, for the first time since Isla's accident, he wasn't alone. The rain had slowed to a whisper by the time Nathaniel Cross followed Lena through the rusted gates of St. Hope Orphanage. His $1,000 shoes squelched against the wet ground, the scent of damp wood and decay pressing in around him. The old building loomed in front of him, its once majestic brickwork now scarred with cracks and graffiti, its windows shattered like broken promises. He didn't belong here. Yet, here he was, trailing behind a barefoot street girl who had somehow unraveled him in mere moments. A girl who had spoken his wife's name, who had known Isla's smile, who had whispered a truth he couldn't ignore. Inside, the orphanage felt frozen in time. The floors groaned under his weight, dust motes danced in the weak light, filtering through the broken windows, and the air was thick with forgotten stories. Torn wallpaper peeled in delicate curls, revealing the bones of a place that had once housed laughter, hope, and children with nowhere else to go. Lena moved effortlessly through the wreckage, weaving between overturned chairs and discarded toys with the ease of someone who had walked these halls 1,000 times. Nathaniel, on the other hand, felt like an intruder. "Why are we here?" he muttered, his voice unsteady. Lena didn't answer. Instead, she stopped in front of a large, colorful mural spanning an entire wall. Nathaniel followed her gaze, his heart pounding. It was a drawing of Isla. The lines were crude, made with colored pencils, but he would recognize that face anywhere. Her deep brown eyes, the gentle curve of her lips, a smile that started at the right corner, as if she were about to tell a secret. Beneath it, a signature. With love, Isla. Nathaniel's throat tightened, his knees felt weak. "She was here," he whispered, barely able to push the words out. "She came here?" Lena nodded. "Every week, twice. She said this place made her feel free. Free." The word hit him like a punch to the gut. Had Isla felt trapped with him? Had she needed to escape their life? Nathaniel had never seen this place before. He had never heard Isla talk about it. And yet, she had left pieces of herself here. With these children. With Lena. Lena moved closer to another drawing. This one was simpler. 3 stick figures. A man, a woman, and a child. The figures were holding hands. Nathaniel's breath caught when he saw what was written beneath it. Family. She wanted a family, Lena murmured, tracing the edges of the paper with her small fingers. A real one. Nathaniel turned away, his stomach twisting. He knew Isla had wanted children, but he had always told her the same thing. Not yet. There's still time. Let's wait until things are more stable. But time had run out. A floorboard creaked, and Nathaniel instinctively turned, his body stiffening in unfamiliar territory. A woman, older, frail but sharp-eyed, stood in the doorway, leaning on a worn wooden cane. "Lena," she said, voice soft but firm, "you disappeared again." Lena smiled, rushing to her side. "I brought him," she said, pointing to Nathaniel. "He's Isla's husband." The woman, Mrs. Martha, judging by Lena's affectionate tone, tilted her head, studying Nathaniel with a gaze that made him feel exposed. As if she could see past his expensive suit, past the empire he had built, and straight into the gaping hole inside him. "So you finally came," she said almost to herself. Nathaniel blinked. "You know who I am?" Mrs. Martha exhaled, moving to an old chair and sinking into it. "Of course, Isla used to talk about you all the time. She showed us pictures." She gave him a measured look. "She invited you here, you know." The room tilted around him. "What?" "She wanted you to come. She wanted you to see what she was doing here." Nathaniel felt like he had been struck. "That's not possible. She never—" He stopped. He had been about to say, "She never asked me to come." But had she? A fragmented memory surfaced. Isla sitting across from him at their dining table, speaking softly. "There's something I want to show you. A place that's important to me." He had barely looked up from his laptop. "Can it wait? I have a flight to Tokyo next week." She had smiled, small and sad. "Of course. It can wait." But it hadn't. Mrs. Martha watched him, her expression unreadable. "You were always busy," she said, not unkindly. She hoped one day you'd notice, that you'd want to see the world the way she saw it. Nathaniel pressed his fingers to his temples. How many moments had he missed? How many times had Isla stood in front of him, ready to share something, only for him to brush her aside? She wanted to adopt Lena, Mrs. Martha said suddenly. The words stopped his breath. He turned sharply, eyes darting between the old woman and the little girl now clutching a stuffed rabbit she had fished out of a forgotten pile of toys. That can't be true, Nathaniel said hoarsely. Mrs. Martha sighed. She was working on it, meeting with social workers. She wanted to make sure you were on board first. Nathaniel's vision blurred, his pulse pounded in his ears. She never told me. Mrs. Martha gave him a knowing look. Would you have listened? The words gutted him. No. The answer was no. Isla had tried to include him in her world, and he had been too consumed by his own to notice. She had wanted to build something, a home, a family, a legacy, and instead he had given her loneliness. Nathaniel ran a trembling hand through his damp hair, his breath coming in short, ragged bursts. Lena stepped forward, her small hand reaching for his. She believed in you, she whispered. She said you just needed to remember where you put your heart. Which Nathaniel's chest ached. He looked at the child in front of him, barefoot, thin, a child who had nothing and no one. He could still walk away. He could still choose the life he had always known, the cold, calculated existence where success meant numbers on a screen and people were only assets. But Isla had seen more. Isla had known there was more. His gaze fell back on the mural, the smile, the secret, the love she had left behind. Nathaniel straightened, squaring his shoulders. What do I need to do? Mrs. Martha blinked, then gave him a slow, approving nod. You can start by saving what she loved. Nathaniel looked around. The orphanage was falling apart. It needed repairs, resources, hope. Isla had fought for this place, for these children. And then there was Lena. She had been alone for so long. Isla had seen her, had wanted her. Nathaniel wasn't sure what came next. He wasn't sure how to be the man Isla had believed he could be, but he would learn, for her, for Lena, for the family Isla had dreamed of, even when he had been blind to it. His hand tightened around Lena's small fingers. Let's rebuild it, he said. And for the first time in months, hope found its way back into his heart. The heavy city lights flickered through the towering windows of Nathaniel Cross's penthouse, casting long shadows across the sleek, modern surfaces of his home. It was the kind of place designed for men like him, cold, precise, emotionless. A fortress built not for comfort, but for control. Yet tonight something felt different. The change wasn't in the skyline, nor in the expensive leather furniture or the towering shelves filled with books he never had time to read. The change sat across from him at the dining table, a small girl, barefoot, her wild curls still slightly damp from the warm bath he had insisted she take. Lena. She poked at the pasta on her plate with a fork, looking up at him every now and then with cautious eyes, as if expecting him to disappear, as if expecting this to be temporary. And maybe that was fair. For most of her life, everything had been temporary. Nathaniel, for the first time in years, felt completely out of his depth. He had made billion-dollar deals without blinking, taken companies from the brink of collapse and turned them into empires. But this was different. Taking in a child was not something he could measure in contracts or stock value. It was messy, unpredictable, terrifying. And yet, here she was. Here they were. Do you not like it? He asked, his voice softer than he expected. Lena's gaze darted up as if surprised that he had spoken. It's good, she said quickly, shoveling a bite into her mouth as if afraid he might take it away. Something in Nathaniel's chest twisted. This girl, this tiny child, had been on the streets, alone for years. No home, no parents, no one to look after her. Isla had found her, had seen her, had wanted to bring her home, and now it was up to him. Lena, he said, hesitating for a second, because the words felt foreign on his tongue. He didn't know how to talk to children. He didn't know how to do any of this. She froze, fork halfway to her mouth. Yeah, Nathaniel exhaled. You don't have to rush. No one is going to take your food away. Lena frowned slightly, looking down at her plate. Slowly, carefully, she lowered her fork. A small victory. They ate in silence for a while. Nathaniel was used to silence. It was the only kind of dinner he had known for years, eating alone at his desk, his mind filled with numbers and negotiations. But this silence was different. It wasn't empty. It was heavy. Lena finally spoke. So what now? Nathaniel looked at her, setting down his glass of water. What do you mean? I mean, what happens next? She bit her lip. Are you taking me back to the orphanage? Her voice was small, but the fear in it was huge. Nathaniel felt a sharp pang in his chest. I'm not taking you back, he said firmly. You're staying here. Her fingers clenched around her fork. For how long? Nathaniel met her gaze. As long as you want. Lena blinked, looking at him as if she couldn't quite believe what he was saying, as if no one had ever said that to her before. And maybe they hadn't. Nathaniel suddenly realized that this wasn't just about giving her a home. This was about making her believe she deserved one. Lena didn't smile, not yet, but her shoulders relaxed a little, the tension in her small frame easing just slightly. That night, as he stood in the doorway of her newly prepared bedroom, one of the many unused guest rooms in his penthouse that had, until now, served no purpose, he watched as she curled up beneath the soft blankets. Before he could turn away, she whispered, "Good night." Nathaniel felt something shift to him. He hesitated for only a second. Then softly he said, "Good night, Lena." For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel alone. The days that followed brought a change in Nathaniel, a change he hadn't expected. He woke up earlier. He found himself pausing during the day to check on Lena, making sure she had everything she needed. He made time. Time to help her adjust to this new life. Time to take her shopping for clothes that actually fit her. Time to talk to her, to listen to her. And in those moments, Nathaniel began to see the world differently. One evening, they walked through the park together, Lena skipping ahead, pointing out things he had never noticed before. A musician playing on the corner, a street artist painting on a worn-out canvas, a little girl laughing as she ran through the fountain. "Do you see them?" Lena asked, her eyes bright with wonder. Nathaniel frowned. "See who?" She gestured at the people around them. Them, the people. Nathaniel had spent years walking through these same streets, and yet he had never really seen them. He had seen profit margins, business opportunities, transactions waiting to happen. But people had been background noise, until now, until Lena. That night as he sat beside Isla's hospital bed, he took her hand in his, just like he always did. But this time he didn't talk about work. He didn't talk about anything superficial. Instead he whispered, "I understand now." Ouch, his voice shook. "I see what you were trying to show me, Isla. I see it." The steady beeping of the machines was the only response, but Nathaniel wasn't discouraged. For the first time in months, he had hope. It wasn't easy. There were challenges. Lena still had nightmares sometimes. She still woke up afraid that this was all just temporary. That one day Nathaniel would change his mind and she would be alone again. And Nathaniel had doubts too. Could he really do this? Could he be what Lena needed him to be? One night she had a nightmare. She woke up crying, her small body shaking. Nathaniel, startled from his sleep, rushed to her room. He hesitated at the door. She had never asked him for help before. Would she want him there? Would she push him away? But before he could leave, Lena's voice broke through the darkness. "Can you stay?" Nathaniel didn't think, he just moved. He sat on the edge of her bed, and for the first time in his entire life, he put his work, his empire, his business aside. Because this moment mattered more. Lena didn't say anything else. She just curled up beneath the blankets, her breathing still shaky but slowing. Nathaniel stayed until she fell asleep. He stayed because, this time, he wasn't walking away. And you, listening right now, what do you think? Do you believe people can change? Do you believe that even the most broken hearts can be mended? If you've ever lost your way, if you've ever felt like you were chasing the wrong things in life, then maybe this story is for you. Nathaniel Cross is on a journey not just of saving Isla, but of saving himself. And if you believe in redemption, in second chances, in the power of love to transform a person, then like this story, comment below. Encourage Nathaniel, because he needs it. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there listening does too, because we all need a reason to believe. And sometimes all it takes is one small hand holding ours. The sterile white walls of Mercy General Hospital had become a second home to Nathaniel Cross. The beeping of machines, the hushed whispers of nurses outside the door, and the scent of antiseptic clung to him like a second skin. 3 months. That's how long he had been walking in and out of this room, sitting by Isla's bedside, waiting for something, anything, to change. And yet, she remained still. Her body, fragile and pale against the white sheets, barely looked like the woman he had loved. No laughter in her eyes, no warmth in her touch, just silence, broken only by the rhythmic pulse of the monitors keeping her alive. But tonight felt different. Tonight, Nathaniel wasn't alone. Lena sat on the chair beside him, her small feet dangling off the edge, her dark curls messy from the day's adventures. She had insisted on coming, and though Nathaniel wasn't sure why, he had let her. "Mrs. Isla," Lena whispered, reaching out to touch Isla's fingers. "We're here. We brought you flowers." A small vase of daisies and lilacs sat on the nightstand, the only sign of color in the otherwise lifeless room. Nathaniel swallowed the lump in his throat. How many times had he done this? Sat here, hoping for a miracle that never came. "Maybe she can hear us," Lena said softly, turning to him with those wide, too-knowing eyes. "Maybe she's just waiting for us to say the right thing." Nathaniel wanted to believe that. God, he wanted to believe that more than anything. He took Isla's delicate fingers in his own, tracing the familiar curves. "I don't know if you can hear me," he said, his voice rough from exhaustion, "but I'm here. I should have been here sooner, Isla. I should have seen you. Really seen you when I had the chance." Lena rested her head against the side of the bed. "You should tell her about the center," she murmured. Nathaniel hesitated, then exhaled. She was right. "We're rebuilding St. Hope," he told Isla, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "The orphanage, the place you loved so much. It's going to be something bigger now, something that will last. For Lena, for the kids you cared about." His voice broke slightly. "For you." Silence. Nathaniel clenched his jaw. Was it pointless? Was he just talking to a body that would never wake up? But then it happened. A slight movement. The faintest twitch of Isla's fingers against his palm. Nathaniel's breath caught. His eyes shot to her hand. Had he imagined it? "Did you feel that?" Lena gasped. Nathaniel had felt it. A tiny shift. A barely there squeeze. "Isla?" he whispered. His heart pounded. "Can you hear me?" Her eyelashes fluttered. Nathaniel froze. One of the machines let out a small but steady beep, an increase in brain activity. The shift was small, almost imperceptible, but it was there. Lena clapped her hands over her mouth, eyes wide with excitement. Nathaniel didn't dare to move. He didn't dare to hope. A nurse walked in, her eyes immediately going to the monitor. Then she stopped, saw Nathaniel's face, the way he was gripping Isla's hand, how he looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. "I need a doctor in here," she said into her radio, urgency filling her voice. Everything after that was a blur. Doctors came in, tests were run, voices spoke in hurried medical terms that Nathaniel didn't understand. But all he could focus on was Isla, how her lips twitched ever so slightly, how her fingers had moved. "She's responding," one of the doctors confirmed. "It's subtle, but it's progress." Progress. After 3 months of nothing, it was the first sign of life. Nathaniel sat back, exhaling sharply. His hands trembled, his body light with relief and heavy with exhaustion all at once. He turned to Lena, who had tears shining in her eyes. "She's coming back," Lena whispered, a small, hopeful smile on her lips. Nathaniel nodded, unable to speak. "She's coming back." The world felt different when Isla Cross opened her eyes. At first, it was just light, a soft, glowing blur above her, shifting in and out of focus. Then came the sounds, the distant beeping of machines, the gentle murmur of voices, and something else. Laughter. A small, bubbling giggle that she swore she recognized, even though she couldn't quite place it. Her fingers twitched. It felt foreign, as if her body wasn't hers anymore, as if she had been somewhere else for a long, long time. Then, warmth, a familiar weight over her hand, a steady grip, a voice. His voice. "Isla?" The sound sent a shiver down her spine. It was Nathaniel, but there was something different about the way he said her name. It wasn't the clipped, businesslike tone she had grown so used to. There was fear in it, and something softer. Hope. Her eyelids felt so heavy, but she fought to lift them, to see him, to understand. The world swam into focus, and there he was, Nathaniel. But he didn't look like the man she remembered. His usually sharp, controlled expression was gone. His hair was a mess, his suit wrinkled, as if he hadn't slept in days, weeks even. And his eyes, God, his eyes. They weren't the eyes of the man who had once sat across from her at cold, distant dinners, checking his phone between every bite. They were red-rimmed, tired, desperate, as if he had been waiting for this moment. Nathaniel, she whispered, her throat dry and weak. A strangled sound escaped his lips. A breath, a laugh, a shim. He squeezed her hand so tightly it almost hurt, as if he needed to convince himself she was real. "You're awake," he whispered. "God, Isla, you're awake." She tried to move, but pain shot through her body, sharp and unrelenting. She let out a small gasp, her breath catching in her throat. "Easy," he said, immediately shifting, his hands hovering over her like he wanted to help but didn't know how. "Don't push yourself." She blinked slowly. Everything felt strange. "How?" Her voice barely came out. How long had she been asleep? Nathaniel hesitated. 3 months. The words hit her like a slap. 3 months. She had lost 3 whole months. Her chest tightened as she glanced around. The sterile walls, the machines, the tubes attached to her. How had this happened? A rush of memories flooded in, a carepaw, a rainy night, a sudden blur of headlights. The accident. Her breathing quickened. She had been on her way to tell him about Lena, about the orphanage, about everything she had been too afraid to say before. Her gaze darted to him. "I know," Nathaniel cut in, his voice thick with emotion. "I know, Isla." She froze. He knew before she could ask. The soft giggle rang out again. She turned her head, and her heart nearly stopped. A little girl sat at the foot of her bed, curled up in Nathaniel's chair as if she belonged there. Big brown eyes, messy curls, a small, nervous smile. Lena. Isla's breath caught. She was here. And Nathaniel had brought her. Tears welled in Isla's eyes. "Lena?" Lena gave a shy nod but didn't move. She seemed unsure, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to be happy. Isla reached out a trembling hand. "Come here, sweetheart." The hesitation disappeared in an instant. Lena scrambled up onto the bed and wrapped her tiny arms around Isla's waist. She was so warm, so real, so alive. "I missed you," Lena whispered, her voice cracking. A sob broke free from Isla's throat. She held her tight, pressing her face into the little girl's curls, breathing her in. "I missed you too," she choked out. "So much." Nathaniel sat quietly beside them, watching. He looked different. Not just exhausted, but changed. Like a man who had seen the world through different eyes. Isla gently pulled back, still cradling Lena close. Her gaze met Nathaniel's, 1,000 questions swirling inside her. "How?" she asked. "How did you—" "I found her," Nathaniel admitted. "She found me." Lena giggled. "I think we found each other." A soft, wet laugh escaped Isla's lips. She turned back to Nathaniel. The man she had once feared was too far gone. "What happened to you?" she whispered. Nathaniel inhaled sharply. "You did." Her chest tightened. "I found out about the orphanage," he said, "about your plans. About her." He gestured toward Lena, his voice breaking. "I should have seen it sooner. I should have listened. But I didn't. And by the time I realized you were already—" His eyes dropped to the hospital bed, silent, still, gone. A deep ache settled in Isla's chest. "I've spent every day since trying to make up for it," Nathaniel admitted, his voice raw. "I spent years chasing things that didn't matter, Isla. Money, power. But this," he gestured between them, between Lena and Isla and himself. "This is what matters." Tears streamed down Isla's face. Could it really be true? Had he finally seen it? Had he finally found what she had been trying to show him all along? "I'm not losing you again," Nathaniel said, reaching for her hand. "I swear, Isla, I'm here now." She felt it. For the first time in their marriage, she felt it. His presence, his love. Not through grand gestures or expensive gifts. Not through money. Through Lena, curled up between them. Through the gentle touch of his hand. through the raw honesty in his eyes. She squeezed his fingers, and for the first time in 3 months, maybe even longer, she smiled, a real, genuine smile. Nathaniel exhaled in relief, his grip tightening around hers. Lena grinned, the beeping of the machines, the walls of the hospital room, the pain. None of it mattered anymore. All that mattered was this moment, this second chance, this family. And for the first time in her life, Isla truly believed everything was going to be okay. The waiting room of Child Protective Services was nothing like the boardrooms Ethan Hayes was used to. Gone were the polished marble floors and high-backed leather chairs that screamed power and control. Here the chairs were plastic and hard, the air smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant, and the walls were lined with faded posters about child safety, as if a few words on a wall could undo a lifetime of abandonment. Beside him, Lily sat in silence, swinging her legs beneath the too-big chair, her small fingers twisted tightly in the hem of her dress. She wasn't looking at him. She hadn't said much since they arrived. Across from them, CLA sat upright, her hands neatly folded in her lap, the only sign of her tension the way her fingers gripped each other just a little too tight. Ethan glanced at the clock. They had been waiting for nearly an hour. A door creaked open. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, a woman in a stiff gray suit, stepped forward, clutching a clipboard like it held the power to determine their future. This way, please. Ethan stood first, then turned to Lily, holding out his hand. She hesitated before slowly slipping her small fingers into his palm. They followed the woman down a narrow hallway, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The office they were led into was just as cold as the waiting room, barely furnished, impersonal, as if families walked in and out of here every day and left broken. The woman, Ms. Winters, according to the plaque on the desk, gestured for them to sit. Ethan took a deep breath. This was just another negotiation, another battle to be won. Except this time it wasn't about numbers. It was about Lily. Ms. Winters adjusted her glasses. I've reviewed your application. Silence. Ethan's fingers curled into fists beneath the table. You have no biological relation to Lily, Ms. Winters continued, and while you, Mr. Hayes, have the financial means to provide a stable home, we must consider the child's best interests in all aspects, not just financial. Ethan's jaw clenched. Not just financial. For years, money had been the solution to every problem he encountered. Every door could be opened, every obstacle removed, every silence bought. But this wasn't about money. This was about proving that they wanted her, that they wouldn't leave, that she was theirs. Ms. Winters turned to CLA. Additionally, Mrs. Hayes, your medical records indicate you are still in the recovery process from a traumatic brain injury. This raises concerns regarding your ability to provide long-term stability for a child in need of permanent placement. The words hit like a slap. Ethan immediately reached for CLA's hand beneath the table, feeling the way her fingers trembled. I'm fully capable of being a mother to Lily, CLA said, her voice controlled but firm. Ms. Winters didn't react. It's not a question of willingness, Mrs. Hayes. It's about capability. Lily shrank in her chair as if trying to disappear. Ethan's stomach twisted. She had heard this before. She had been in this exact room or one just like it, waiting to hear where they would send her next. How many times had she sat like this, listening to strangers decide whether she was worth keeping? Ethan leaned forward, his voice steady but burning with quiet rage. You're talking about her like she's a piece of paperwork that needs to be filed correctly, he said. She's a little girl, our little girl. Lily's head snapped up. For the first time since they walked in, her eyes met his, filled with something like hope. CLA squeezed his hand under the table, a silent agreement. Ms. Winters sighed. Even with your resources, there are policies in place, procedures that must be followed. Given Lily's lack of formal records, her legal status is complicated. Lily's fingers dug into her dress again. Ethan felt a wave of helplessness. For months, he had rebuilt his world around this child. And now, someone who had never met her was telling him she wasn't his to keep. She's not complicated, Ethan said, his voice raw. She's just a kid who needs a home, and we're giving her one. Ms. Winters was unmoved. I'll need additional time to review your case. She stood, signaling that the conversation was over. The words felt like a death sentence. Ethan looked at Lily. She wasn't crying. But she had gone somewhere else entirely. A place where she had already convinced herself that she would lose them too. Ethan had never felt more powerless. He wasn't going to let this happen. That night, Ethan tore through the boxes in his home office. Papers flew, files slammed against the desk. There had to be something, some loophole, some way to prove that Lily was already theirs. And then he found it. A blue folder, familiar handwriting on the front. His breath hitched. It was Isla's. Ethan's shaking hands opened it, and his entire world stopped. Adoption forms, half-filled, dated months before Isla's accident. She had been planning this long before he had ever known Lily existed. She had wanted her. She had wanted this. There was a note scribbled in the margins of one page. Talk to Ethan after visiting the orphanage. Show him. His throat burned. She had wanted to show him, and he hadn't been ready. But now he was. Now he would do whatever it took. He grabbed the folder, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. He had something stronger than money. He had Isla's words, and he would fight for their daughter. The next morning, they walked back into Mrs. Winter's office, but this time Ethan wasn't asking. He slammed the blue folder onto her desk. She blinked in surprise. These are the original adoption forms my wife started before the accident, he said. This proves that this was always the plan, Suez. Winters hesitated, flipping through the pages. You wanted evidence that Lily belongs with us? Ethan pressed. This is it. A long silence. Then Miss Winters exhaled. I'll move the case forward, she finally said. CLA gasped softly, her eyes filling with tears. Ethan felt his own chest tighten. But, Miss Winters added, glancing at Lily, there is one last question. She turned to the little girl. Lily, do you want to live with them? Lily didn't even pause. She reached for Ethan's hand, gripping it tightly. Yes, she whispered. A single word, and yet it was the loudest thing in the world. Have you ever fought for something, or truly fought for it? Even when the odds were stacked against you? Because Ethan and CLA just won their battle. And now Lily is finally home. Drop A in the comments if you believe in the power of love. Comment, welcome home, Lily, if you're celebrating this victory with them. Because this isn't just a story. It's proof that family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up. And sometimes all it takes is one person to say, you are mine and I am never letting go. The envelope sat heavy in Ethan Hayes' hands, the embossed seal of Reynolds Global glinting under the soft glow of his office lamp. It was a once-in-a-lifetime offer, the kind of deal most men would kill for. A CEO position overseeing a global empire, a salary that made even his vast fortune seem modest, a chance to cement his name in history. But there was a catch. It meant leaving. Leaving CLA, who was still rebuilding herself after months of recovery. Leaving Lily, who had only just begun to believe that this was her forever home. Leaving everything that had finally started to feel real. For years, Ethan had believed that success meant power, that his worth was measured in numbers, in buildings that bore his name, in bank accounts that never ran dry. But now he wasn't so sure. His fingers trembled as he slid the letter from its envelope. The official contract. Pages and pages of legal language, all culminating in the one thing that mattered most. To accept this position, you must relocate to London for a minimum of 3 years. 3 years. He stared at the words, unable to move, unable to breathe. 3 years away from CLA, from Lily, from the community center they had built in Isla's honor. 3 years of missed bedtime stories, of ballet recitals, of watching Lily grow into the girl she was meant to be. Was it worth it? Ethan pressed his hands to his temples, exhaling sharply. This was what he had always wanted. But now, for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure if it was what he wanted anymore. A soft knock pulled him from his thoughts. The office door cracked open, and Lily's small face peeked in. Papa? Her voice was hesitant. Are you busy? Ethan immediately straightened, his heart aching at the way she asked the question, as if she still wasn't sure whether she was interrupting something more important. He set the letter down. Nothing was more important than this. Never too busy for you, sweetheart, he said, offering her a small smile. Come here. Lily hesitated for only a second before padding across the room, her bare feet silent against the hardwood floor. She climbed into his lap, curling into him like she belonged there because, as she did, she traced the edges of the envelope on his desk with curious fingers. "What's that?" Ethan swallowed hard. "It's a job offer." Lily tilted her head. "Like a new company?" "Something like that." She thought for a moment. "Do you want it?" Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came. Did he? He used to. But now, when he looked down at this little girl, his daughter in every way that mattered, all he could think about was what it would mean to leave her behind. "Would you have to go far away?" Lily asked, her voice smaller now. Ethan's throat burned. "Yes," he admitted, "for a long time." Lily was silent for a moment. Then almost imperceptibly, she curled into him a little tighter. "Oh," she whispered. It was such a small sound, but it shattered him. Ethan closed his eyes. He could already see the future playing out. The way she would pretend to be strong, the way she would smile and tell him it was okay, even as she wondered if she was losing another parent. She had been abandoned before. He wouldn't do it to her again. He couldn't. He kissed the top of her head, his decision already made. "I'm not taking it," he murmured. Lily stiffened slightly. "Really?" "Really," Ethan said, shifting so he could look into her wide brown eyes. "Because I had already would have the most important job in the world, and that's being your dad." Her entire face lit up. And in that moment, Ethan knew he had made the right choice. The next day, Ethan walked into the conference room where his board of directors had gathered. The tension in the room was palpable. They all knew why they were here. They knew about the offer, and they expected him to take it. Ethan stood at the head of the table, fingers braced against the polished wood. "I'll keep this short," he said, his voice steady. "I'm turning down the offer from Reynolds Global." Silence. Then, "What?" Robert, his CFO, nearly choked on his coffee. "Ethan, this is Reynolds Global. You'd be running one of the largest financial institutions in the world." "I know." "Then why?" "Because," Ethan cut him off, his voice unshakable, "I've spent my entire life chasing the wrong kind of success." Robert frowned. "I don't understand." "I used to think that power was the only thing that mattered," Ethan admitted. "That every decision had to be about growth, about the next big deal." He exhaled, shaking his head. "But that's not true, is it?" Robert leaned back, watching him carefully. "Then what does matter?" Ethan's jaw tightened. People. He thought of CLA, fighting her way back to life after months of unconsciousness. He thought of Lily, smiling brighter than he'd ever seen her when he told her he wasn't leaving. He thought of Isla, of the community center she had dreamed of the children who needed a place to feel safe. He met Robert's gaze. People matter. The people we love. The lives we touch. For the first time in years, he felt light, because this wasn't a loss. It was a win, the most important win of his life. That night, Ethan sat on the balcony of their home, watching the city lights with CLA curled beside him and Lily playing with a toy on the floor. For years, he had thought he wanted more money, more power, more deals. But sitting there with the people he loved more than anything, he realized this was enough. No, this was everything. The Claire Hayes Community Center stood tall against the golden hues of the setting sun, its fresh paint glistening under the warm light. It was nothing short of a miracle. A place that had once been only a dream, a scribbled plan in a notebook, a whispered hope in a hospital room, now stood as a beacon of second chances. Ethan Hayes ran a hand over the engraved plaque at the entrance, built in honor of Claire Hayes, a woman who believed in hope, in love, and in the power of family. His fingers traced the name of the woman who had changed his life. Behind him, the sounds of laughter echoed from the playground where children ran freely. Kids who had never had a safe place to play before today. At the heart of it all, Lily stood beside Mrs. Martha, helping a little girl tie her shoelaces. The sight made Ethan's throat tighten. She belonged here. She had always belonged here. CLA's voice broke through his thoughts, soft and filled with wonder. "Do you think she knows?" Ethan turned to her. She was breathtaking, even after everything. Even after months of fighting, of learning how to walk again, of slowly rebuilding the life she had nearly lost. He smiled gently. "I think she knew before we did." CLA exhaled, blinking back tears. Then it was worth it. Every struggle, every sleepless night, every doubt. This center wasn't just a building, it was CLA's heart, Isla's dream, and Lily's future, all woven together into something that would outlast them all. The doors to the event hall swung open, and the murmurs of anticipation filled the space as guests took their seats for the grand opening ceremony. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Tonight wasn't just about cutting a ribbon. It was about honoring the past while stepping fully into the future. CLA took his hand. "Are you ready?" He wasn't, but he nodded anyway. The room hushed as CLA stepped onto the stage. The moment she touched the microphone, Ethan saw the nerves flash across her face. But then her eyes found Lily. Their daughter sat in the front row, eyes wide with admiration, hands folded neatly in her lap. CLA's voice steadied. "When I was lying in that hospital bed, trapped between two worlds, I wasn't sure if I would ever wake up," she began. "I didn't know if my story was over." The audience was silent, hanging on every word. "But when I did wake up," she continued, "I realized something. It wasn't my story that mattered most. It was the stories I still had a chance to be part of." Her gaze moved over the audience, landing on Mrs. Martha, on Lily, on the children who had gathered to hear her speak. "This center," she said, "isn't about me. It isn't even about Isla or Ethan." Her voice trembled. "It's about all of you. Every child who's ever felt forgotten. Every person who's ever needed a second chance. This place exists because love doesn't end when a person is gone. It continues, it builds, it grows." A hush fell over the crowd. Then after a moment, applause. Thunderous, heartfelt, real. Lily was the first to rush onto the stage. She wrapped her small arms around CLA's waist, burying her face in her mother's side. Ethan wiped at his eyes before joining them, wrapping them both in his embrace. The world might not have noticed, but this was the moment he had been waiting for his entire life. As the evening went on, guests mingled, children explored the play areas, and donors admired the sleek design of the classrooms. Ethan wandered through the halls, taking it all in, the laughter, the life. Then he felt a tug at his sleeve. Lily. She held a small envelope in her hand, biting her lip as she looked up at him. "What's this?" he asked. Lily hesitated before whispering, "It's for her." Ethan's heart stilled. She meant Isla. Lily placed the envelope into his hands before running off to join the other children. Ethan slowly opened it, his breath catching as he pulled out a small, hand-drawn picture. It was of their family. Him, CLA, Lily, and in the sky a small golden heart. Below it, in Lily's careful handwriting, "Thank you for bringing us together, Mrs. Isla. I love you." Ethan exhaled sharply. The night air felt thicker as he stepped outside, gazing up at the stars. He didn't know if Isla could hear them, if she could see what they had built, what she had started. But he liked to believe she could. And for the first time in years, Ethan wasn't chasing the future. He was living in the present, and that was enough. The morning light poured through the large windows of the Hayes family home, casting a soft golden glow over the living room. Ethan stood near the fireplace, his hands resting on the wooden mantel, gazing at a framed photo. It was a picture of Isla, taken long before the accident. She was laughing, her head tilted back, her eyes bright with life. It was the same look she had when she talked about the orphanage, about the children she wanted to help. He exhaled, feeling the weight of everything that had led him here. Not to a business empire, not to power or wealth, but to this moment. The sound of tiny footsteps echoed in the hallway. "Papa!" The voice was small but filled with warmth. "Lily." Ethan turned just in time for her to run into his arms. He caught her with ease, lifting her into the air, her laughter ringing through the room. She called him Papa. Not Mr. Ethan, not Sir, just Papa. It was the name he never expected to hear, the title that meant more than any CEO position ever could. Lily giggled, pulling back just enough to look at him. "Did I surprise you?" she asked playfully. Ethan smiled. "Always." At that moment, CLA appeared in the doorway, her presence as radiant as the morning sun. She was whole again, not just healed physically, but alive in a way she hadn't been for years. She walked over, slipping her arms around Ethan's waist, resting her head against his shoulder. "You look happy," she whispered. Ethan exhaled, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "I am. For the first time in his life, he truly was. Later that evening, they sat outside on the balcony, watching the city lights flicker like stars below. Lily curled up beside Ethan, her small hand in his. "Papa," she said softly, "what does home mean?" Ethan felt his heart tighten. For years, he had thought home was just a place, a penthouse with high ceilings and glass walls, a mansion with security gates and a staff to cater to his every need. But now he knew the truth. Home, he said, squeezing Lily's hand, isn't a place. It's the people you love. Lily smiled, leaning her head against his arm. CLA watched them, her eyes soft with understanding. She had always known, and now, finally, so did he. This story is about more than just Ethan, CLA, and Lily. It's about all of us. How often do we chase things that don't truly matter? Success, money, recognition. We work late hours, we push people away. We believe there will always be more time. But in the end, what matters most isn't what we build. It's who we build it with. Ethan almost lost everything before he realized the truth. But you don't have to. Take a moment today. Call someone you love. Tell them what they mean to you. Put your phone down. Be present. Because at the end of the day, wealth fades, titles disappear. But love is what lasts. Join the story. Be part of the family. If this story moved you, if you believe in second chances, in love, in the power of family, drop a heart in the comments. Write, "Home is where love is." If you believe that family is the greatest success of all, and if you want to hear more stories that touch your heart, that remind you of what truly matters, subscribe to the channel now. Because this isn't just a story, it's a reminder. A reminder that no matter how lost we feel, no matter how many mistakes we make, we can always find our way back home.